Okay, share screen.
Oh, good morning or good evening, good afternoon in some cases. Um, uh, we're going to continue our discussion as usual, but we're going to begin with some prayers and motivation for our discourse. So, Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penche sange drupa sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la Changchu Badu Dagni Kepsu Chi Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki Trola Panche Sange Trupa Sho. To try to spend a moment trying to actualize that, we take refuge to the Buddha, the founder of the teachings, the Dharma, which is at the beginning, the actual refuge. That doesn't mean the texts, the words or anything, but the actual understanding of those that can protect us from suffering when we remember them, that things are impermanent, that things are empty, that sentient beings have been kind, that they've been our mother, and so forth. And we take refuge in the Sangha, our spiritual friends who can help us take the medicine of the Dharma. We take refuge until we become enlightened. So this is a Mahayana refuge. Then to request the teachings, to make offering, to accumulate merit, to be successful. Sashi Puki Chukshing Meto Tram Ri Rab Lingji Ni De Gen Padi Sangye Shingdu Mikte Uwargi Trokun Nam Dakshing La Chupasho. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma. And if Chanka will just move up the page a little bit there, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained, those to be subdued. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Okay, good to see you. We're going to begin with a little bit of meditation to solidify that motivation that we just created. So sit comfortably, spine erect. Get your legs relaxed. I always have to remember to sit so that I can remain stable here. Recognize your breathing. Keep it in mindfulness. Recognizing when you're breathing in and breathing out. Differentiating between a long breath and a short breath to the exclusion of all other thoughts. Having hopefully calmed a little bit the discursive mind, conceptualizing mind. Now turn your attention, instead of your breathing, turn your attention to your mental consciousness, which is extremely subtle. So we need to first notice its contents and recognize that the contents arises within the clear light nature, conventional clear light nature of the mind, which is presenting itself to us. The mere lack of obstruction to the arisal or dismissal of mental objects. They can arise out of the clear light nature and absorb back into it like a cloud on a sunny summer day, evaporated back into just the clear sky. This is an object not of your eyes or body consciousness, any of the senses. This is something that's recognized by your wisdom eye. Mental consciousness. It doesn't have a shape or color or expanse. It's just the knowledge of that. In this case, the mere negation of any obstruction to the mind, of the mind. Also accompanied by a non-conceptual state, like when we were doing the breathing meditation. Not giving room for any thoughts. That the thoughts arise, recognizing immediately, as soon as possible, that they are arising within the clear light nature of the mind. So depriving them of their tenacity, of their hold over us, dismissing them right away, by focusing on the nature of the mind within which they're arising rather than the objective thoughts themselves. And remembering what the Buddha taught, that this is our conventional Buddha nature, our developmental Buddha nature, the fact that we can develop, we're face to face with that, the fact that we can develop all the good qualities and eliminate all of the faults from our mind, all of the faults being adventitious, arising due to causes and conditions, an enemy or harsh word or a sting of an insect or whatever. And the fact that we can recognize this and be inspired by it is due to the fact that we have, at the moment, a life of leisured endowment, an auspicious moment that the Buddha said is so rare. Like the chance of a blind turtle who sits on the bottom of the ocean for 100 years, coming up once for 1 second for a breath of air to the surface, and by chance, and that one instant, analogous to finding a rebirth in the upper realms, also putting its head through a floating yoke, floating ring of gold on the ocean, just happens to be there at the same time, like our being born as a human at the time when the Buddhist teachings have been given, still existing. This life is so meaningful because it can be used to find real happiness for ourselves and real happiness for others. Not simply samsaric happiness, but dharma happiness that derives from having ceased problematic minds, sometimes temporarily, eventually ceasing them permanently, true cessations, to reach a state of liberation from the problems of this life and even problems of future lives, reaching a state of nirvana. But not being satisfied with that, as the Buddha said, those who are intelligent should not be satisfied with his lesser vehicle, but should try to enter his Mahayana, his greater vehicle, a great vehicle that takes a very spacious vehicle, room for all sentient beings, taking them to the great destination of enlightenment, not even satisfied taking them to nirvana, taking them to enlightenment, because they have all been infinitely, depthlessly kind as we survey past lives. And they will be kind in future lives also. They've been kind when they've been our mothers, our friends. They've been kind when they've been strangers, because they've provided the infrastructure of our lives. They've built the roads, they've delivered the milk, they've paid our wages. Even they didn't intend primarily for our happiness. They were cooperative causes for our happiness. And even when they were harmful to us, even when we thought of them as enemies, they benefited us in being cooperative conditions in the human realm for our negative karma to ripen, like now, with anguish and fear and wars and acrimony and so forth. They've been kind that this karma can ripen now rather than for enormous periods of time in the lower realms when we would not be able to progress in the spiritual path. They've given us the opportunity to practice patience, perseverance, to develop our compassion and wisdom and so forth. For the sake of all these mother sentient beings, we don't recognize immediately as mother just because of the distance of time. Like our mother, who we may have been separated from in the time of youth. Later, we encounter her in a dire strait, in the streets begging, or in a mental hospital. And when we recognize, even though there's been a period of time we've been separated, that she is our mother, great compassion for her rises. I think I'm going to release them from suffering, set them in everlasting happiness. But to do that, I have to achieve that state myself, state of release from suffering and achievement of all-knowing. I have to become a Buddha. To do that, I have to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, collection of merit that becomes the cooperative cause for the form bodies, the Rupakayas, the Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya, and the collection of wisdom that becomes a cooperative cause for our achievement of the Dharmakaya, wisdom Dharmakaya. To do that, I need to know how to collect those, how to accumulate those two collections, especially the wisdom aspect, which is difficult to understand, explained by the Buddha, but commented on and explained in detail by Nagarjuna, by Chandrakirti, his commentator, and the four people in later ages, commented again by Lama Khapa, explained in detail in his Gompa Rapso, Illumination of the Intention. The subject matter of our class. So for that purpose of achieving enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, I'm going to listen, contemplate. That means weigh, analyze the material, and then meditate on it in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm going to participate today for that purpose. That's my end goal, to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Oh, like you bring your attention back to the present. Good to see you all. So, how is your meditation? Is it improved over the months, and in some cases years? Any observation?
What I've noticed, Venerable George, is that I've been studying mind and mental factors. Oh. And right now I'm taking a class with wisdom publications with Thupten Jinpa. And understanding mind and mental factors does help, like a machine regulated, like you work with it as a machine.
Okay.
To me, it has.
Yeah. Good observation. How about our meditation? Anyone have any experience in the continuity of their experience? Mikhail, what do you think?
I find it a little bit difficult to focus on developmental Buddha nature, like this very subtle thing, while listening to your advice.
Right. So a lot of times people, they ask lamas, I'm not a lama, but they ask the lamas, like they'd ask Geshe Zopa or the Dalai Lama or Yangtze Rinpoche or someone, will you meditate with us? Can you lead us in meditation? So the only way to lead you in meditation is to act as though I was your internal, mind that's thinking like this, like this, like this. Without that, just sitting there in the presence of someone without saying anything. And I try to do that more and more, to leave less and less comments. But that's more or less kind of what in the Indian tradition is called darshan. Any of you know what darshan means? Have you heard that? Paul, you may be off getting a cup of tea.
No, I just I've got very limited bandwidth, so I turned off my video, unfortunately. Darshan just means seeing, literally, or it's like that sort of divine seeing. You go and you get darshan.
You see. you come to the Guruji, your yoga teacher, or your, the mother in the Hindu tradition. There were some great practitioners who people felt great love, just to be in her presence, just to sit in darshan, not say, they didn't say anything, you didn't say anything. Maybe you were meditating, maybe it was just like, seeing, being in their presence. So I try to go more as we progress, try to leave the breathing meditation with less discourse, because you know how to do it, and the meditation on the clear light nature of the mind. So thanks for reminding me. A little less commentary on my part, and more chance for you just to practice that. But the real practice of meditation is not done in the presence of the guru or the teacher or the genla, or your class teacher, or even your fellow discussion members. It's done by yourself in isolation. So
yeah, I never intended to say that you're speaking too much, please.
No, but I take, but that is a point, but the real meditation is done, say, for instance, before coming to the class. It's good to sit for some time, go through those sequences, calming the mind, as the Buddha suggested with the breathing meditation. I remember being in Sarnath some years ago at the Translators Con. Oh no, I guess it was when I took my cousins to on a sort of like a visit of India, and we were in Sarnath, and I was all alone in the afternoon, sitting on one of these pavilions. There was almost no one else around, sitting meditating and thinking, the Buddha may have sat here or just close to here and sat with the breathing meditation, because almost all of the sutras, many of the sutras begin, the Buddha went on alms round, came back, sat down, washed his feet, ate, washed his feet, sat down, and placed his attention on the breathing in front. So this is something we're emulating the Buddha in doing that breathing meditation, calming the mind, and then meditating on the clear light nature, which is much more subtle and much more difficult to perceive, but a very good preparation for the meditation on emptiness, because what is appearing to our mind is something very similar to emptiness. It's a mere negation. It doesn't have any color or shape. And in order to be successful and eventually in meditation on emptiness, it's very useful now to try to be successful in keeping stability and concentration on this slightly more accessible object. Still it's difficult, the conventional clear light nature of the mind. Okay, good point. And Mary Ellen, what do you think?
Last week you went over 4 essential points in meditation. The first one, identifying, grasping at true existence, and then identifying the mental image. And then I lost track of 3 and 4. Could you please repeat that?
Okay, so that's not exactly right. And that brings up a question that one of our distant viewers, Pun King in Singapore, has mentioned. So she wrote this. She said, "Hi, Ven George." And in Singapore, they say Ven instead of saying venerable. Hey, Ven George. Hi, Ven George. Regarding how to identify the inherent self. So the first point is not identifying the inherent self. When we talk about the 4 essential points, sort of as a background, although we're going to be going into detail about that again, the first the first essential point in a simplified meditation on emptiness is identifying the object of negation. You're not automatically, from the beginning, assuming things are inherently existent. You're just trying to see how the self appears to the mind, and that is preemptively, that is called the object of negation. You're not yet sure it is to be negated, but it's given that presumptive name, that which is to be negated. So what you're trying to do is find the subtlemost way that the I appears to you. That's called identifying the object of negation. Then you at that point, you're analyzing, how does that appear? Even in that first point, it appears to be existing from its own side without being, without the need of giving it a name, without the need of any kind of mental imputation upon it. It's just existing solidly there from its own side. The second point is, if it were to exist the way that it's appearing from the first point, so the first point was identifying how it's existing. If it were to exist that way, it would either have to be identical to the aggregates or different than the aggregates. It would have to be, because it's appearing to be inherently existent, it would have to be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different than the aggregates. That's called establishing the pervasion. You know what the word pervasion means, right? Nadine, can you explain what the word pervasion means?
It means it includes it.
Yeah, it means that, let's say, if the incense smoke in your room is pervading the room, it means it's covering everywhere. There's no space where it doesn't go, right? So a pervasion, establishing the pervasion means if it were to exist the way that it appears, it would be covered by either being inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different than the aggregates. And that takes some logic and brain work. If it exists, it would have to be pervaded by inherently one, being inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different than the aggregates. Making sense? That's the second point. Then the third and fourth points are just checking those two things. Is it inherently one with the aggregates? Or you can do it in either order. Is it inherently one with the aggregates? And coming to the conclusion that it is not. And then, is it inherently different than the aggregates? Investigating that and realizing that it couldn't be inherently different than the aggregates. Those are called the four essential points. So once you've put all of those together, you've recognized the object of negation, how the I seems to be appearing, and how it seems to exist as inherently existent. Then secondly, recognize that there's a pervasion. If it were to exist that way, it would have to be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different than the aggregates. Investigating those two possibilities as the third and fourth of those elements. It's not inherently one, it's not inherently different. But if it did exist, it would have to be one of those. Going back over these points again and again until it dawns upon you, oh, therefore, it does not inherently exist the way that it's appearing to my mind and the way that my mind is believing in it. And at that moment, one can experience a realization of emptiness. It becomes clear at that moment that the object that you had been believing in, that had been appearing to you and you had been believing in before, does not exist. And you focus just on that mere negation. You're no longer analyzing. So, in a sense, you're no longer using vipassana. That vipassana now becomes into wisdom, just the insight that, it's not there. You're no longer using words. You no longer are analyzing and thinking it's not there. Oh, this is shunyata. You're not thinking that. You're just experiencing the mere lack of that which you had. Well, in our last class, when we gave the motivation, or the class before that, we talk about this trusted object, the thing that we've always believed in since beginningless time, the appearance of inherent existence. There's just that experience in your mind that doesn't exist. It's only when you arise from that experience that you can conceptualize about it. That can you think, oh, I just had an insight into emptiness. I've realized emptiness. So those are called the 4 essential points. So Pun King had said, regarding how to identify the inherent self. So that's not what you're trying to identify. You're trying to identify the object of negation. And within that, once you identify how the self appears, to recognize that it is appearing as inherently existent. So Pun King had said, whenever someone scolds or blames me, which is examples I've given before, and as you find in the literature, is a good way of trying to recognize the inherently existent I, the way that the I seems to be appearing as inherently existent. I try to concentrate to find the inherent I. So again, what you try to do is try to find the way that the I is appearing. It's only later that you will discover that it seems to be existing inherently. I try to concentrate to find the inherent I, which is a mental image, a concept. So there's a difference between mental image and concept, right? They're not the same thing. Mental image is what is appearing to your mental consciousness through which you are thinking about something, through which you are having a concept about something. So mental image is not the concept. The concept is kind of like the subject. The mental image is like the proto-object, like the positive image, like as opposed to a negative that you get to when you make film, when you make a print of some old-fashioned cameras. It's like the positive that you look through, that you are imagining you having a concept about something. She goes on to say, reflect that events happen due to dependent arising, cause and effect, and are impermanent. It's the way of conventional truth. By thinking like this, recognize the non-existence of the inherent I. Place the mind like a piece of wood. I'm not sure what Pun King means. Hopefully this evening she'll be watching the recording of this, because it's like 12 hours difference in Malaysia, where she is. Oh, she's in Singapore, rather. When the mind becomes steady, calm, and if the situation requires a response, for instance, at work, act in accordance to ethics. So hopefully, as we talk about this more and more, that procedure will become more and more clear. But in the same way that Mikhail has asked, it's difficult to meditate on this when there's some commentary going on. It seems that we need some commentary at the beginning in order to clear up what exactly we're hoping to be able to do. Shankar, did you have your hand up? Someone had.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So regarding the comment you made that that the mental image is the positive thing that you are looking through, right?
Yeah. I'm using the example of, like, for instance, when you have film in a camera, oftentimes you would get something called a negative. So everything would be reversed, right? Those things that are actually black would appear white on the film. But then there's some color films which are positives, where the everything is exactly the same as it appears outside. I'm referring to that mental image as being like a positive, so that by looking through it, it appears that you're actually seeing the thing.
Well, maybe I'm confusing two things then, but what the idea, the famous example of the way we develop a mental image of some, where we have an image of what is a cow based on excluding everything that is a non-cow.
Right. So that sounds like a negative, right? But that
right.
is,
So that's what I'm confused about.
It's a double negative, right? Everything.
Oh, I see. That's what you mean by positive here.
Yes. Yes.
Ah, okay.
So when we talk about a mental image being the let's say the mental image of a cow, this is usually according to Sautrantika. Even some in Prasankika or in Tantra say that you don't even have to think that way. But generally in Dharmakirti and Dignaga, in Pramana, in the literature about valid cognition and so forth that we've all studied, the general presentation is that we know phenomena conceptually by means of exclusion. That what we are knowing, whereas opposed to direct perception, we know things directly. We don't have to exclude anything. When I see the tree, it appears to me directly. If I see the leaves of the tree, I still have leaves on my tree here. It's not that cold yet that they've all fallen off. Whereas when I have a mental image, when I think about a tree, I'm not perceiving all the elements directly. I'm having a knowledge of that tree by means of excluding everything that's not a tree. So excluding what is not, that becomes a double negative. So I in a sense, I create some kind of image, like the positive celluloid that you can look through to see the Eiffel Tower, or imagine you're seeing the Eiffel Tower and so forth, but it doesn't have all the elements. It doesn't show you the impermanence and all of the other elements of that thing that appear to direct perception. Okay, so are we okay?
Good. I'm not confused then. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you, Venerable George. Just regarding the 4 essential points, how does that relate to what you were sharing before regarding the seed and the sprout, in terms of the sprout is not born from the same as the seed, different, both, neither?
Right. So there are various logical reasonings to establish emptiness. Right. So one of them is called, slightly different ways of translating it, but you could say the reasoning that establishes that phenomena are not one or different. That's the one that we're talking about here. So there are 4 essential points. There is another logical reasoning that Nagarjuna uses at the beginning of fundamental wisdom, and that we're going to be investigating here, that is sometimes called the Vajra elements, or the Vajra spokes, or the Vajra fragments, or what was it called? Some of you pointed the other day, the slivers,
The diamond
Vajra slivers, or sometimes people write diamond slivers, right?
I think Jeffrey Hopkins uses that term, right? Diamond slivers.
He did in some places. That in his later, fortunately, by the way, Jeffrey is apparently, after some examination, is now receiving antibiotics and is becoming more flush, and seems to be recovering from his downturn. So there is apparently an increase in his his health and everything. But later he didn't call it diamond, he called it Vajra, and he went away from slivers to some other kind of word. So what this means is that here the pervasion that you establish. So there's still, the first point is identifying the object of negation. The object of negation, let's say in the case of a sprout or production, birth, would be that the production itself is conceived by you to be inherently existing. It's something that really exists, that can be found somewhere within the process of the seed becoming the sprout and so forth. That's the object of negation. Then the establishing the pervasion, in this case, has 4 elements rather than 2. In the case of the not being inherently one and not being inherently different, that only is 2. Here, in the case of the Vajra slivers, if you want, it's that if something were to be inherently produced, it would have to be inherently produced from itself, inherently produced from something which is inherently different, inherently produced from something which is both self and different, or inherently produced without any cause. 4 fingers. So the pervasion has, establishing the pervasion has 4 different elements. Then you would have to prove then 4 different things. It's not produced from an inherently existent self. It's not produced from something which is inherently different. It's not produced from something which is both self and different, and not produced without cause. So that ends up with what? 6 elements, right? You still have the first 2, identifying the object of negation and establishing the pervasion. The pervasion now has 4 points. So after those first 2, there are 4 more things. So there are 6 elements ultimately. So you could say 6 essential points. And then there are some explanations that call 7 points. But that will be coming later in detail. But just so that you have some general idea about that. Sean? Sorry.
I thought you just said earlier that a direct perception can perceive impermanence. Is that correct?
Direct impermanence appears to direct perception, but it is for ordinary beings who are not Arya beings. They cannot perceive that. Well, let's say subtle. We're talking about subtle impermanence. Subtle, or of course, gross impermanence. We can kind of say you can perceive. The leaf just moved, or the dog ate the piece of meat that you left outside, and you see it disappearing. So that's gross impermanence. Subtle impermanence does appear to the sense perceptions, but it is not perceived because it is too subtle to be perceived by our sense perceptions. It can be perceived by our mental direct perception, just the same way that our mental direct perception can perceive emptiness. Okay. Sean?
I don't know. I guess I've always assumed it was like an inferential kind of thing. I'm inferring that this is impermanent.
Right. Your sense
logic.
perception does not know impermanence. It does not realize subtle impermanence. It can, in a sense, it can realize gross impermanence. You know, you see something breaking in front of you. You see a car crash, two cars that looked new a moment ago, and then the next moment they're crushed together. But subtle impermanence, we cannot perceive with our sense consciousnesses, although it's appearing to them. Okay, so that's something that, again, we may have talked about before, but will come up again in the future. Let's say, for instance, from a Prasangika point of view, and this is an issue that we're going to be talking about in the class today, from the Prasangika point of view, phenomena appear to be inherently existent, but actually they are empty of inherent existence, right? So it's said that emptiness does appear to us along with inherent existence, but our sense consciousnesses do not perceive, do not realize emptiness. In a sense, it's appearing, but it's something too subtle to perceive. It's superseded, sort of obscured by the appearance of inherent existence. Okay, so something to think about. So let's get on to the material of our class. So last time we had started this section identifying, grasping at true existence according to the Svatantrika point of view, or the Svatantrika Madhyamaka, right? Remember, Svatantrika has two subdivisions. Those that are like Bhava Viveka and Gyanagarbha and others that align with the Sautrantika, that is to say, they believe that there are external objects, and then there are those that are called the Yogacara Svatantrikas, that believe that there are no external objects, and so forth. Okay. So here we talked about the three parts: identifying true existence and grasping at true existence. There are three outlines. So this is the one we're dealing with right now, according to the Svatantrika system. Why do we do that? Because in order to understand the Prasangika view of true existence and grasping at true existence, we first understand how the great Svatantrika masters understood it. So here, this first section that we've been talking about, identifying true existence and grasping at true existence. And then Lama Tsongkhapa said that although it's explained, it doesn't appear that there are reliable Svatantrika texts that explained the identification of the object of negation. So again, what's the object of negation here? It's the hypothetical true existence and the grasping at that. Those are both objects of negation here, the gaccha. There don't seem to be other reliable Svatantrika texts other than the Madhyamaka Loka, or Madhyamaka Aloka, that was composed by Kamalashila. The Kamalashila was a Yogacara Svatantrika, right? One of the great lamas that came to Tibet. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, but reading Jimpa's text, but Kamalashila's light of the middle way presents a criterion for the conventional existence, the contrary of which can be recognized as constituting the criterion of ultimate or true existence. Okay, so we talked about this last time. So the quotation from Madhyamaka Loka. And here I'll switch to Anne's translation. So Anne's translation is on, which page is this? 167. This rather than just continuing with Jimpa's. So Anne translates this quotation: the mistaken awareness that superimposes on things which in reality are without their own entityness, without their own nature, an aspect opposite to that is called a concealer. So that means the ignorant consciousness for Svatantrika that superimposes upon phenomena a true existence, an entityness that isn't really there, is called samvriti, which in this case we can translate as concealer. Remember, we talked about the word samvriti as in samvriti satya. Samvriti can mean conventional, as we can translate samvriti satya as conventional truth, or we can translate it as truth for a concealer, samvriti meaning concealer, or we can translate it as relative truth. You might think conventional truth and relative truth sounds like the same thing, but there's a slightly different emphasis here. There's usually 3 different meanings of samvriti that Chandrakirti pointed out. So here, the mistaken awareness, that means talking about the grasping the true existence, that superimposes on things which are in reality without their own entityness, an aspect opposite to that. That means it superimposes on things an entityness, a true existence that's not really there. That kind of ignorant consciousness is called a concealer, samvriti, or in Tibetan we say kunsok, all concealing, because it obstructs itself from the perception of suchness, or because it veils other awarenesses from perception of suchness. And then Kamalashila, within the quotation that's being given here, cites the Lankavatara Sutra. Things are produced conventionally, kunsoktu. That means in a concealed way, you might say. Ultimately, they are without inherent existence. That which is mistaken about the lack of inherent existence is asserted as the concealer of reality. So that was the quotation that Kamalashila used. And he went on to say in that citation in the Madhyamaka Loka, since, so we could say she has in parentheses here a long statement, since an artificial awareness in the continuum of a proponent of true existence, Jimpa has, because the perception of things, we could just say, because this ignorance consciousness arises, or because the perception of things arises from that conception of true existence, all false things, all falsities, that means not ultimate reality, which such an artificial awareness sees displayed by that conception of true existence, as if they are truly established, are called mere conventionalities. Moreover, that conception of true existence arises through the maturation of beginningless predispositions for error, whereby all living beings see phenomena displayed as if they had an inherently established nature in reality. Therefore, all entities of false things which exist through the power of those sentient beings' non-defective thoughts, that is to say, conceptual and non-conceptual consciousnesses unaffected by the conception of true existence, are said only to exist conventionally. So that was the that was the mouthful that we had talked about last time. So we're gonna try to clear that up a little bit more. So in order to do that, let me go back to reading Jimpa's Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on that. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, up to this erroneous mind is, in the first part of the citation, indicates how beings mistakenly ascribe ultimate existence to what are ultimately devoid of intrinsic nature. So he's counterposing two things here. An ultimate existence opposed to things that are devoid of intrinsic nature. Intrinsic nature here is another way of what we say inherent existence. So for the Svatantrikas, phenomena have an intrinsic existence that does exist, an inherent existence, an inherent nature that does exist. And that inherent nature appears to the senses as it is, correctly according to them, but that the mental consciousness that is mediating this, like the fellow or the gal in the basement looking at the input from the monitor cameras, that superimposes upon things which are just merely inherently existent, according to Svatantrika, correctly. It imputes upon that, superimposes upon that, a true existence, something more than just inherent existence. Then Lama Tsongkhapa says, from conventional up to covered over. So one has to sort of jump back into that statement. So where is that? What is that talking about in Jimpa's translation? From conventional up to covered over. Where is that? Only conventionally. From conventional up to covered over.
It's in the very first paragraph.
First section, right. So that first paragraph says, this erroneous mind is called the conventional or concealer. So you could say from concealer up to, because as it were, it obscures suchness through it, or through it, suchness is covered over. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, for that phrase, conventional or samvriti is taken to be the concealer, in that it conceals the final truth. Richard.
Sorry for interrupting your presentation. I just wanted to understand. I'm still having trouble understanding the difference between inherent existence and true existence. Lama Tsongkhapa uses the word ultimate existence in that first sentence of commentary. Is ultimate existence a synonym for true existence in this context?
So it depends on who you're talking to.
Well, in this context, I mean.
No, but I mean, it depends on whether you're talking about Svatantrika or Prasangika. For Svatantrika, let's say when we talk about ultimate, that things do not ultimately exist. That means in their for Svatantrika, in the meditative equipoise on emptiness, you're talking about an ultimate mind that's realizing things as they actually exist. And ultimately, to that mind, there is no true existence. And ultimately to that mind, even to that mind, there's no inherent existence. Ultimately. Okay. So from Prasangika point of view, Prasangika would say ultimately also means the meditative equipoise on emptiness. It's another way of saying in emptiness. Ultimately, or to the ultimate mind, or in other words, in emptiness, there is no existence whatsoever. So they both agree about that. Okay, so it's the distinction of how the word ultimately is being used here is of great importance and will be explained. We always want it to be right now. It will be explained soon. There are two different ways that ultimate is being used, and that has caused a lot of confusion over the decades and centuries and years. Different scholars understanding it, conflating the two meanings of ultimate. Okay.
But it also
yeah,
seems
well, I'm
like
very happy to know that I'm in a long line of distinguished confusers.
Yes.
Distinguished confused beings.
Yes, I'm among those also. Sean, did you want to say something?
Well, it also seems like they're using a different definition of emptiness, because if things exist inherently externally and they exist inherently in the mind, the appearance to the mind, then what are they calling the emptiness that's being concealed? There's no emptiness, it's inherently existing. So what are they calling emptiness?
Okay. So there is a difference here between, we've talked about this many times, and we talked about it in the tenets classes, which you didn't get a chance to take part in. So you're kind of jumping in, like a lot of people are, missing some kind of preliminary understanding. So generally for Prasangika,
I'm speaking of the Svantantrika.
okay, let me say this. So generally, when we talk about true in true existence, or truth as in ultimate truth, we've mentioned this many times, but to go over it again, that which is true is that which exists the way that it appears. Something which is false, the way that it appears does not agree with the way that it actually exists. Like the car salesman who assures you with a big smile that you're getting the best deal, that's false. I'm assuming that car dealer who was indeed, there may be some honest, true car dealers, but I'm just using this as an example, right? That's called a falsity. So for Prasangika, the way that phenomena appear to be true, that they actually exist the way that they appear, that appearance of truth is actually empty of existing that way. That so-called true existence that's appearing to us is actually false. Also for Svatantrika, the appearance of some meaning of truth also for them does not actually exist there. That's what it is empty of. But Prasangika is saying that the Svatantrikas is coming right now. We keep on getting sidelined into these discussions about the points. Svatantrika is saying that there's still, to the senses, there's something that's appearing which is acceptable, which doesn't have to be negated. That is its inherent existence conventionally. Inherent existence means that you can find something out there that is the tree. You can find something out there that is the person. Let's say if you search within the person, you can find something that actually is the person conventionally, whether it be the collection of aggregates or the mental consciousness or the alaya vijnana or something like that. You can actually find something. Prasangika would say that there is no, even on the conventional level, there is no inherent existence. Svatantrika and Prasangika agree that there's no true existence.
But which part is not true to the Svatantrika? Like I get it in the Prasangika, but when they say the Svatantrika is saying
we keep on, because we keep on interrupting. Let's go a little bit further, because the actual identification of what true existence means here is coming right now. Okay, so what do we say? Hold your horses. Do you say that in where you are? You know that expression? You want to keep on going, but let's hold on for a second. So here. So this is where we ended last time. Okay, just around here. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, because it originates from grasping at true existence, that which sees that grasping, that which sees what that grasping reveals as truly existent is a thought, not a sensory concept cognition. So what this is saying is that true existence for Svatantrika, true existence does not appear to the sense consciousnesses. For Prasangika, true existence does appear to the sense consciousnesses. But for Svatantrika, true existence does not appear to the sense consciousnesses. True existence is something that the mental consciousness conjures up because of beginningless habituation in grasping and believing in that. Let's go a little bit further. So that's where we got last time. The commentary to the Two Truths, which is a text written by Gyanagarbha, who is not like Kamalashila. Kamalashila and Shantarakshita were Yogacara Svatantrikas, right? Gyanagarbha generally is accepted to be a Sautrantika Svatantrika. So the other group of the Svatantrikas. The commentary to the Two Truths that Gyanagarbha wrote, he wrote both the Two Truths and its auto commentary. It states that true existence, which is the object of negation, does not appear to sensory perception. That's
Where are you reading from? Which page?
I'm
is
reading
it?
from Thupten Jinpa's text.
I know, but which page?
So-
on?
Page 175, about the middle of the second
Thank you.
paragraph.
Sorry. Yeah.
The commentary to the Two Truths states that true existence, which is the object of negation, does not appear to sensory perceptions. And this remains true here as well. So this was a point I wanted to elaborate on. I think I mentioned last time. So Sautrantika Svatantrika, that is Gyanagarbha, and his predecessor, Bhavaviveka, they were both Sautrantika Svatantrika. They both said that there were external objects, right? They both said, or Gyanagarbha said very clearly that true existence does not appear to the sensory consciousnesses. And Lama Tsongkhapa's comment that this remains here, this remains true here as well, means that in the case of Kamalashila, who is Yogacara Svatantrika, that is also the case. Even though they're different segments of Svatantrika, it's also the case that true existence is not accepted to appear to the sense consciousnesses. It's something that is manufactured by the grasping the true existence in the mental consciousness. Okay. So then continuing, from this erroneous mind in turn, again, he's quoting from the citation in Kamalashila, up to beginningless time presents this grasping at true existence to be innate. So what does that mean? When we say this erroneous mind in turn up to beginningless time. So right after the quotation from Lankavatara, in the middle of the next segment in Kamalashila, it says, this erroneous mind in turn comes about from the ripening of a habitual propensity to err that exists since beginningless time. So that's the part that's being talked about here. From this erroneous mind up to beginningless time presents that this grasping at true existence to be innate. So it has existed in our minds, in the minds of all sentient beings since beginningless time. So it's not something which is just developed intellectually due to tenets or something like what we call intellectually formed delusions. It is something that's innate. Thus the phrase "to all living beings" is mentioned. So it's something that's innate to all living beings. Then, as for the minds of these living beings, this is not only conceptual thoughts, it also includes non-conceptual cognitions. Okay, again, getting, without some commentary, getting very complicated. I'll read you what Geshe Zopa gave commentary back in 2002 at this point. Geshe Zopa said, in this system, we're talking about the Svatantrika, right? Inherent existence is not the object of negation. They accept inherent existence. It is not the gaccha. Inherent existence is not the gaccha. So generally, according to Prasangika, we say, Tokpe taksam mayimba. So Tokpe Taksam means imputed by conception. Sam means merely. Mayinpa means it is not. Svatantrika say that phenomena are not merely imputed by conception. Prasangika says phenomena are merely imputed by conception. Do you remember that point when we've talked about Prasangika before? We've talked about phenomena are merely, the word merely is important, merely imputed or designated by conception. There's nothing that you can find out there that's existing from its own side. But for Svatantrika, you can't say that. You can't say that phenomena are merely imputed by conception, because there is something existing out there from its own side, conventionally. So Geshe-la said, that is not merely imputed by thought for Svatantrika, but Svatantrika says, Lola Nangwe, Wangi, Shakpa Mayimpa. So this is the point that's not mentioned in the text that one has to be aware of from having some familiarity with the Svatantrika system previously. Just like in order to understand some of these points, you have to know a little bit about Abhidharma, about Lorig and tenets and so forth. So what is this phrase saying? Lola Nangwa. Nangwa means appearing. Lo means consciousness or mind. Lola Nangwa means appearing to the mind. Wangi means by the power of. So by the power of appearing to the mind. Shakma Mayimpa. So that means that for Svatantrika, they're saying that phenomena are not posited. That means they're not presented as existing correctly by the power of appearing to a mind. What does that mean? If phenomena were said to be existent because they appeared to the mind, then you could say the horns of a rabbit existed because the horns of a rabbit appear to some minds, some mistaken minds, right? You have to say that phenomena are posited to exist by the power of their appearing to a non-defective mind. That's the crux of what sort of the difference between Prasangika and Svatantrika is saying. Svatantrika is saying that the conventional existence is not merely imputed by conception, as Prasangika says, but that conventional existence is posited or imputed by the power of appearing to a non-defective consciousness that's not affected by the causes of error. Say, for instance, if you have jaundice, you can't posit that the snow mountain appears yellow or things appear yellow because your eye consciousness is defective due to a cause of error. Or you can't say that because to your mental consciousness there is the appearance of the horns of a rabbit. You can't use that to say that the horns of a rabbit exist, because that particular mind is affected by the power of error, right? It is mistaken. So Geshe-la said, everything does not truly exist. Yet for Svatantrika, Prasangika would also say phenomena do not truly exist, but Svatantrika would say that they still inherently exist. By the power of their appearing to a non-defective consciousness, you can posit the conventional existence of things. Because they exist by the power of appearing here is to a consciousness, some kind of consciousness, low, like when we talk about low rig, we often translate that as awareness, but it can be generally means consciousness. That low, in this case for Svatantrika, is a valid knowledge. Lola nangwe wangi. Lo is not necessarily, what do you say? Lola nangwe wangi shak means you cannot establish something to exist because it appears to any consciousness. You cannot say that. If you were to say that, then, oh, a rabbit horn would exist because it appears to some minds. But that mind to which the horns of a rabbit appear is not a valid mind. The mind to which a twirling firebrand appears to be a circle of fire, and so forth, various kinds of mistaken consciousnesses are not valid. In the same way, so Lola Nangwa means that consciousness to which something appears should be a valid consciousness. Any valid consciousness which is established by the power of appearing by a valid consciousness, that is conventional existence for Svatantrika. So that's not spelled out in the text here. That's something that we're supposed to know already. So for Svatantrika, when we say that what is appearing to sense consciousnesses is not true existence, what is appearing to sense consciousnesses is conventional existence, correct conventional existence, if that sense consciousness is not affected by a source of error, and that sense consciousness, in that sense, is a valid consciousness. Okay. Let's talk about mistaken consciousness. Is a sense consciousness mistaken? Who wants to take a guess? Shanka.
Well, it depends on whether it's a Prasangika or Svatantrika asking that question, right?
Okay, well, let's get Prasangika out of the way first of all.
Okay.
What does Prasangika say? Sense consciousness mistaken?
Sense consciousnesses are not mistaken.
For Prasangika. Oh, Amy says no. What do you say, Amy?
Are mistaken,
Why?
according to Prasangika.
Why?
I can't answer
Okay.
that. Only
Why?
because
But you don't have the answer. It's sort of like in grade school.
I
You
have to
say,
think about it. I'm sorry.
the answer is 7. You say, why? Well, I don't know. So for Prasangika, all sense consciousnesses are mistaken because what appears to be a phenomena all appear to be truly existent, appear to be inherently existent, but they are not.
Yeah.
But for Prasangika, the fact that they are mistaken consciousnesses does not mean that they cannot be relied on, that they can still be valid within their sphere. They can still see that fire burns wood and so forth. They can be valid consciousnesses, even though they're mistaken. There's a difference between being mistaken and being lua. Paul, how do you translate lua?
Deceptive.
Deceptive. You can be deceived with respect to something, in which case it's not a valid consciousness. Valid consciousnesses are not deceptive, are not deceived, but you could still be mistaken about some aspect of it. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just a quick question. Is the reason for the prasangikas dependent on the fact that the subtle a subtle dependent arising is the answer to that?
Is prasangika dependent?
That it is not acceptable, that is not, I'm just having trouble framing it, that it's dependent arising, subtle dependent arising, which is the reason that it's not, that it doesn't appear, that it isn't as it appears.
Okay, let's wait a little on that. So let me just finish up what Geshe-la was saying here. So Geshe-la said, any valid cognition for Svatantrika, which is established by the appearing to a valid consciousness. That means to a non-defective consciousness. This is for Svatantrika. But if something is not, but if it is established on its own, without being based on appearing to the mind, to a non-defective consciousness, this is what Svatantrika means by true existence. So some of you were saying, well, I think Sean was saying, but what does Svatantrika say true existence means? That means they say that conventionally existent means established by the power of appearing to a non-defective consciousness. Let's say to an I consciousness. Let's use that as an example. That would be called conventional existence. And they would say that also is inherently existent, Svatantrika. But if there is something that exists without the need of it appearing to a non-defective consciousness, something you just dream up that doesn't appear to a non-defective consciousness, that is what Svatantrika calls true existence.
Wait, repeat the last sentence again. I'm sorry.
So what Svatantrika says is the measure of true existence is something that appears, something that is posited to exist, that you believe to exist without the need of it appearing to a non-defective consciousness, to a valid consciousness. It's something that's completely made up by the mind, like true existence, they would say. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not getting it still. Would you mind giving me an example?
Let me finish reading what Geshe-la said, and then we'll go over again. If it is not established by the power of appearing to a valid consciousness, but if it is established on its own, by its own, from its own side, without being based on appearing to the mind, nothing to do with the mind, but its own absolute nature, that one would imagine things to exist in one's own mind, thinking, without appearing to the mind, just thinking, things exist. Based on your experience, of course, throughout the world, thinking about things, thinking, things exist without the need of their appearing to a non-defective consciousness. That, for Svatantrika, is the measure of true existence. So they say that phenomena are empty of existing truly. They're not truly existent, but they're still inherently existent because they exist correctly as they appear to a non-defective consciousness as findable within their basis of designation.
Sorry, repeat that again, please. The last sentence.
Right. So interestingly, let me aside here. So interestingly, the great lamas of all the traditions have studied the Svatantrika texts, like Kamala Shila's, this text that we're talking about, the illumination of the Majjhamaka, the Majjhamaka Valoka. They've studied Gyanagarbha's Two Truths and its commentaries. They studied Bhava Viveka, they studied Shantarakshita's texts, and they have, all of these things are very familiar with them. So Lama Tsongkhapa is presupposing that we know some of this already, right? So let me say again. So for Svatantrika, phenomena appear to the mind, to the sense consciousnesses. They do not appear to be truly existent. That's not what appears to the sense consciousnesses. What appears to the sense consciousnesses is inherent existence for Svatantrika. And for Svatantrika, they say that that inherent existence is valid. That's correct. That phenomena are inherently existent. But what does not appear to the sense consciousness is true existence. What is true, what for them the measure of true existence is something that is imagined to exist without the need of it appearing to a non-defective consciousness. That could be the sense consciousnesses or the mental consciousness. It's just as though in their own mind, in our minds, and we do have this kind of thought also, this kind of meaning of true existence. Something exists by its own without the need of it appearing in reality, conventionally, to a consciousness, to a non-defective consciousness.
So what are they using to determine that? Like, are they saying, like, if you have a camera, you can take a picture with the camera and that shows you that what's appearing to my mind is what's appearing to what's not a mind?
No, we're talking about here, for Svatantrika, conventional existence is what appears to the senses. Of course, it appears to the mental consciousness also. Conventional existence appears, and what is appearing is correct. It's not a mistake. Like for Prasangika, what is appearing is a mistake, because what is appearing is, for Prasangika, is true existence, inherent existence, which does not exist. For Svatantrika, true existence does not appear to the sense consciousnesses. They're saying one element of those two, inherent and true, does appear to the sense consciousness. What appears to the sense consciousness is inherent existence. I'm noticing my camera has this, when I get close, it's sort of, it's getting out of focus here as I move my hand close. What is appearing to us is inherent existence, and that is correct. That is validly established. That phenomena can be found within their bases of designation. That's okay for Svatantrika. But Prasangika says, it's not only true existence. Well, for Prasangika, true existence does appear to the sense consciousnesses, as well as inherent existence. Prasangika says they are the same. You can't separate those two.
But I thought you were saying that it's truly a true existence is based on how it would appear regardless of whether it appeared to a mind. Is that not what you said?
I don't think I use those exact words, but something like
Well,
that. True for Svatantrika, we're talking about Svatantrika.
right. Leave Prasangika out.
Svatantrika is saying, first of all, they are explaining what true existence means by means of how we accept conventional existence. So you have to go about it through this route. Conventional existence does exist correctly, validly. Prasangika would say that too, but in a different meaning. Conventional existence exists. It is correct, and it exists by the power of being posited to exist by a valid cognition, one which is not affected by any source of error. So you wouldn't call an eye that has cataracts or is affected by jaundice, or an ear that has some kind of ear ailment or something like that. Those are not non-defective sense consciousnesses, right? But by the power of appearing to a non-defective sense consciousnesses, phenomena are posited to exist conventionally. Anything that the mind could conjure up as existing without needing to appear to a non-defective consciousness, that Svatantrika says would constitute true existence, something that's existing there truly without the need of it appearing to a non-defective consciousness. Starting to get an idea? Richard is saying no. Okay, why not?
I'm sorry, because something that...
You don't have to be sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because something that could, does that mean that it could appear to a defective consciousness? In other words, does that mean that the horns of a rabbit have true existence? That doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't seem as if the distinction between non-defective and defective makes any sense in this context whatsoever. It seems to me that what it is a distinction without a difference, and Prasangika recognizes that there's no distinction between inherent and true existence, while Svatantrika tries to make a difference in order to create some sort of inherent existence to conventional reality. Prasangika doesn't agree that there's any inherent existence whatsoever to conventional reality. That's how I sort of understand it.
Okay, so let's go back. So horns of a rabbit. So do horns of a rabbit appear to non-defective consciousness?
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
So the distinction between a non-defective I just want to make the point. The distinction between a non-defective consciousness and a defective consciousness is immaterial. Horns of a rabbit simply don't exist.
Right. So for Svatantrika, horns of a rabbit do not conventionally exist because they do not appear to a non-defective consciousness. Right? Only things that exist conventionally, and we have to use the word conventionally here because there's only two kinds of existence: existing ultimately or existing conventionally, right? So phenomena exist conventionally if they can be posited by a non-defective, if they can be posited by the force, by the power of their appearing to a non-defective consciousness. So for Svatantrika, ordinary phenomena that we see. Let's use the eye as the main example here. The phenomena that we see are not appearing to be truly existent. They are appearing to be inherently existent, conventionally, which the Svatantrika says they do exist conventionally, inherently. They are appearing correctly. So for the Sautrantika Svatantrika, sense consciousnesses are not mistaken. So like, say, for Jnanagarbha. For Yogacara Svatantrika, are the sense consciousnesses mistaken? So
yes, they would be. They would be, because if the sense consciousnesses believe that there's an external object, if the sense consciousnesses perceive an external object, then
right.
According to Yogacara, they would be mistaken.
Right. Yogacara Svatantrika has that particular aspect, and I think Stephen was nodding also. So yeah. For the difference between Sautrantika and Svatantrika Madhyamikas, Svatantrika, let's say Sautrantika Svatantrika, Yogacara Svatantrika, is that for Sautrantika Svatantrika, sense consciousnesses are non-mistaken. So like Jnanagarbha, who wrote the Two Truths, who was saying that true existence does not appear, but what is appearing is non-mistaken. That's exactly the way they are. For Yogacara Svatantrika, Kamalashila, and Shantarakshita, that those sense consciousnesses are mistaken in that what appears to them is that the objects are external to the mind that's perceiving them. There's a distance between the subject mind and the object that's conceived, that's perceived. According to Yogacara, they actually come from the same seed on the alaya vijnana, the foundation consciousness, but they are actually one entity. So that that's a mistaken cognition, but that doesn't preclude it from being valid. In the same way that Prasangika says that although phenomena appear to be truly existent and inherently existent to the sense consciousnesses, they can still be valid within their sphere.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, a lot to chew on there.
So in the Swantrantika Svatantrika, what makes, if it exists externally, if the object exists inherently and it appears to the senses correctly,
non-defective consciousness,
a non-defective consciousness correctly as inherently existent, what makes that untrue to be not a true existent? Because it's saying they're not true existent, they're conceptually
right.
existent.
So to mental consciousness, if there is a conception that phenomena could exist without the need of it appearing to a sense consciousness, to a non-defective consciousness, like just sort of like, forget about all your experience.
Well, because before humans existed,
just say,
Earth existed.
Say to your mind, you have a whole life of experiences that you can think of in memory, that you can access now through your sense consciousnesses, right? Just ignore all of that, as though the phenomena that you can now think about could have some kind of existence without their need of appearing to your consciousness. That's the measure of Svatantrika's meaning of true existence, that they could exist without the need of their appearing to a non-defective consciousness.
So they're saying you cannot do that.
that phenomena do not, that for Svatantrika,
I mean, you'd have to say that
do
there's
not exist in an imagined way that the mental consciousness can conjure up. It's not something that's appearing to sense consciousness. They cannot exist in a way without their appearing, without being posited by the power of appearing to a non-defective consciousness. So to hear those words now sounds complicated and maybe incomprehensible, but will be becoming more and more clear. For Prasangika, the meaning of true existence is something more general, that phenomena do not exist at the way that they appear as being findable within their basis of designation. For Prasangika, true existence is the same as inherent existence. There's no difference at all. They are identical. William.
The matter of something not appearing. For example, in the large sutras, they talk about in the pore of a Buddha having millions of worlds and millions of Buddhas existing within that pore. Is that such a phenomenon? Is that what you're talking about?
No, because
then is that something then that does appear to a valid cognition, a valid cognizer, as we say?
Yeah.
It appears to a valid. If I were to look at a Buddha, I would see the billion.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. But you don't have that valid cognizer that can cognize that.
Oh, so
say for instance, a Buddha, the Buddha's mind. Let's say the example of Milarepa. Milarepa could make himself incredibly small when there was a hailstorm and find shelter within a discarded yak's horn that was on the ground, kind of like a cave, right? So when his disciple, who was it? Paul, who is the disciple I'm thinking of?
Dompa?
No.
Rechumpa.
Rachel.
No, but that was his.
No, was it? No.
No, that was his.
Gampopa.
Dompa.
No, I'm talking about Milarepa's disciple.
Gampopa.
Oh, Gampop.
Not Gampopa, Rejungpa, I think, Rejungpa. So anyway, Rejungpa was looking for him and said, where is he? And he could hear Milarepa calling. Milarepa had made himself to this incredibly small size. That's sometimes given as an example of the Buddha being able to emanate numberless worlds with even in a pore, a hair pore of his body. So that's talking about something else. That's not talking about here the measure of true existence. Okay. So the main point here is something that's not mentioned explicitly at this point in the text. It's something that we're supposed to know already about the Sautrantika and Yogacara Svatantrikas, what their measure of true existence is. What they mean by true existence is that which is imagined by the mind, let's say posited by the mind to exist by the power of, without need of being appearing to a non-defective consciousness. It's just something that's existing truly, obliterate everything that's existing conventionally right now, and just imagine some ideal mind that's thinking that phenomena exist. They just exist truly without the need of their appearing to a consciousness. Well, you had the proviso, a non-defective consciousness. You just imagine that they appear, that they exist without the need of appearing to a consciousness. That's the measure of Svatantrika's, definition of true existence.
How is that different?
Hold on. Let me ask, Stephen, does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, I think I'm getting it, Venerable George.
Nadine? Okay. Diana?
There's an old saw, a sort of cheap, pseudo deep philosophy question in English anyway, which is, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right.
Am I correct then that for Svatantrika, true existence would be the thing that would exist if a sound were made without there being any non-defective consciousness to be aware of it?
But that example is used again in a different way when we talk about Yogacara Svatantrika, when we talk about Yogacara. But yeah, you could say that. I think that would be a valid example of that.
Do they have any examples of true existence, or are they saying there's nothing that truly exists?
Svatantrika says nothing truly exists. And of course, Prasangika also says nothing truly exists. Svatantrika says, but conventionally, phenomena are inherently existent. Prasangika would say, conventionally, phenomena are not inherently existent, because inherent existence is the same as true existence. For Prasangika, phenomena do appear to be inherently existent, do appear to be truly existent. According to Svatantrika, phenomena do appear to be inherently existent, but they do not, to the sense powers, but they do not appear to be truly existent. True existence is something that's conjured up by the mental consciousness. Don, what do you think? Making sense? You're already unmuted, so you can talk.
Yeah, I asked Jumpatation Rinpoche this question, how the Svatantrikas distinguish between ultimate and true existence. And his answer was, though I found helpful, that if something truly existence would appear the same to a conventional or ultimate mind and could not be damaged by either.
You were saying you asked the difference between true existence and ultimate existence?
In this Svatantrika case, yes.
Ultimate existence and true existence. Okay.
Yeah. So he said, true existence, something truly existent from this Svatantrika point of view, something truly existence would appear the same to a conventional or an ultimate mind and could not be damaged by either.
Okay, I think that's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. You're talking about Geshe Jampa Tekchok, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Who is one of our teachers.
Anyway, I found that very helpful for my mind.
Yeah. So, but for Prasangika, true existence would not appear to be, let's see. True existence does appear to conventional consciousness, but it does not appear to the meditative equipoise on emptiness, which you would call an ultimate mind. Okay. Okay, let's just go a little bit further here. Okay, so that was Geshe-la's commentary at that time. So Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary continues after that. It says, things come to be posited by virtue of these two classes of consciousness. that things do not exist on the ultimate level, and that these false entities exist only on the conventional level, is the meaning of the line, the arising of things is conventional. So for Svatantrika, they say that phenomena do exist conventionally. And as they appear to a non-defective consciousness, they appear to be inherently existent, and they exist that way. But even for Svatantrika, that inherent existence does not exist ultimately. That means in meditative equipoise, there is no appearance of true existence. There is no appearance of inherent existence. Then the text continues. That things do not exist on the ultimate level, and that these false entities exist only on the conventional level, is the meaning of the line, the arising of things is conventional. The meaning here, however, is not that they exist as the concealer, as the grasping at true existence. I'm not sure what Chimpa's thinking there. Anne Klein translates on 168 near the bottom. The meaning of is this is the meaning of the statement in the descent into Lankavatara Sutra. Things are produced conventionally. Moreover, this does not mean that such falsities exist conventionally in the sense of existing for that sort of invalid conventional awareness, which is a consciousness conceiving of true existence. Rather, they exist for conventional valid consciousness. Okay, so subtle points here. Let me just finish that paragraph, and we'll mull this over for a second. Understood thus, an existence through its own objective mode of being, not posited in dependence on being perceived by cognitions, and should have the proviso here, non-defective cognitions, or posited by virtue of the power of cognitions, constitutes true, ultimate, and final existence for Svatantrika. And grasping at this is the innate grasping at true existence. Whoa, what do you think? Making a little more sense? Doris, what do you think? Completely bamboozled?
It's getting a little bit more solid, but it takes work.
Yeah. What my yoga teacher, Patabi Joyce, used to say, no pain, no gain. I get that's everywhere in sports nowadays, they say, right? Unless you work through the pain. In this case, the Dharma patience, the patience of analyzing these things and not getting completely frustrated by that. Diana, I'm going to ask you first.
Unless you don't want to go into this now, because we're having enough difficulty with the terms we've already been given. What does final mean? By virtue of the power of cognitions constitutes true, ultimate, and final existence.
Right.
Next to the last sentence of that
paragraph. Yeah, I see that. I'm just seeing how Anne translated this. So she said, thus in the Svatantrika school, to exist in the manner of an objective mode of subsistence, without being posited through appearing to an awareness or through the force of an awareness, is to exist truly, to exist ultimately and to exist as the object's own reality. Jimpa translates that as true, ultimate, and final existence. So final here, I don't have the Tibetan right in front of me, what Anne translates as, she translates those through as true, ultimate, and exist as the object's own reality. Jimpa translates that third one as final existence. So I'm not sure what the Tibetan of that is. So Anne says, also conceiving such is the innate conception of true existence. So what we're talking about generally when we're talking about, true existence, in some ways that can be, you can understand the word true meaning it exists the way that it appears, right? When we talk about truth, things that are true are things that exist the way they appear. That would be sort of the meaning of truth. So when we're talking about true existence for Svatantrika, there is a mode of appearing to mental consciousness, not to the sense consciousnesses, as though phenomena could exist without the need of appearing to a non-defective cognition. That's their measure of true existence, which could also be called ultimate existence. If things existed that way, that would be the ultimate way of existing. Or Jimpa says final existence. Let's see what his note says. 322, his note says, the emphasis is mine. So there must be some, what was his emphasis there? Oh, he has some things in, what's it called? Italics, right? In fact, that last phrase is not in italics. The things that are in italics, he says, the emphasis is mine. The italicized phrase constitutes the measure of the hypothetical true existence, right? Because it's always important to say hypothetical here, because true existence doesn't exist. If it were to exist for Svatantrika, that would be the measure of it. That would be how you could gauge it, that it would be something that would exist without the need of appearing to a non-defective consciousness. Okay. So Paul hasn't made many comments, so I'll give Paul first choice here. Paul.
Venerable George, I just wanted to tell you that the Tibetan for that is Demba, Dundam, and Yangdakbar Yuba. So I think he's translating Yangdakbar Yuba.
Yeah. So Demba means true, like when we talk about truth, Dondam Demba. The second one was what? Dondambar?
First one was Demba. Then it was Dundam. Or
Dundam means ultimate, generally.
And then Yangdakbar Yuba.
Yangdakbar Yuba. So like when we talk about Yangdakbar Zokbe Sangye, we say perfectly complete, or Jimpa saying here, final existence. So all of those are terms that are used in the Svatantrika literature to refer to this kind of existence. Also in Prasangika, that phenomena have some kind of true existence, ultimate existence. How did Anne translate here? Existing as the object's own reality. So she's translating reality as Yangdakpa. So like real existence. Sean?
I just wanted to try to drill it down and make sure I'm getting this. So
Okay, that's good.
So from what I'm understanding, what they're calling true existence would be something that could exist independent of any mind. Is that not what they're saying?
Right.
Um,
It exists without appearing to a non-defective mind, or you could say, yeah, you could say.
well, because if
it
it
exists
doesn't
without
appear to a
appearing-
mind, then it doesn't it doesn't appear to any
you
mind.
couldn't say it wouldn't appear to a mind, because to talk about conceiving of true existence means it's appearing to that conception, right? That's a mind. So you
But is
can't.
the
That conception is not a non-defective mind. That's a samvriti. That's a concealer. That's a jerk. That's the jerk in our mind that's believing things for Svatantrika, believing things could exist that way without the need of their appearing, just having some kind of ultimate existence
so
beyond the realm of needing to appear to you.
So the idea that the earth existed before humans, and that so that the earth truly existed before any mind conceived of it, would be false according to this, correct?
No, why? Why would that be? There are always some minds that are the omniscient mind is perceiving that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is without there being some mind, it can't exist according to this.
No. It's not saying without appearing to a mind, because, say, for instance, the grasping to true existence, or we're talking about Svatantrika, right? Grasping for true existence is a mental consciousness which is believing in, grasping at, assenting at an appearance to the mental consciousness that phenomena could exist without appearing to a non-defective consciousness, a correct consciousness.
Is that not the same as me saying that I can posit in my mind a period of time before humans existed where the earth existed without appearing to a mind, because there were no human minds to perceive that existence, so that must mean.
No, that's appearing. That doesn't mean whether there were people existing then. It means whether it is appearing to your mind now. That can, let's say, past events can appear to your mind now. You're not perceiving them right now, but they were perceivable by some consciousness at that time. Even if there were no humans existing on the earth at that time, there were spirits and bodhisattvas and Buddhas with perception of these things with clairvoyance. So it's not as though any of these conventional phenomena that conventionally exist go unobserved. So Diana's question about the tree falling in the forest and so forth, the example that's often used in the Yogacara is, if there was no consciousness perceiving this, could it actually have fallen? That's a different question. Let's leave it at that. We have a break next week. Those people who have had the habit of coming to discussion group, should we skip this coming Monday? Nadine and Stephen say no. Okay, so they're mainstays. Okay, so we'll have discussion on Monday, but then the following Monday we have off. The following Saturday, Monday we have off, and then we'll begin with our classes after that. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So what date do we start again?
You're asking me to look at the calendar again.
Oh, no, I'm just okay. Next week, so next Saturday we're off, right?
We're off the 28th. We begin again the 4th.
November 4th.
November 4th.
I'll be gone on November 4th. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So
I don't know how you could possibly continue.
I don't know how we'll record it for you. And yeah, so continue reading, think about this, discuss it with your friends. Any last comments before we dedicate? Paul, do you have any observations? You have to explain. Oh, Jennifer's here. I thought, okay, I didn't see.
No,
Okay, I was going to say you can explain it to Jennifer.
Sheila,
I thought Sheila was out with a plumbing problem, but Sheila has been here. Okay, so let's dedicate our merits. Someone's just put a note. Yes, new registration we need for the new course. So Shankar, you put up the dedication.
Yes.
We know generally most of them.
It disappeared. Wait a minute.
We'll begin while you're putting up.
Oh, here we go.
Lama Sangye Prubgyune Droa Chikyang Malupa Dei Sala Kupajasho. So what that means is Gewadi means due to these virtues. That includes the collection of merit and wisdom. Nirdu means quickly. Dak means I. Lama Sangye Drupyurne. Drup usually means accomplish, but when we here we say attain, may I become, may I accomplish the state of a guru Buddha. And having done that, the last syllable of that line, ne, droa means migrators, chik kyang means even every single one, malupa without leaving out anyone, even your enemies, de sala, to that sa, that bhumi, that level, kopasha, may I set them, put them in that state. Here it says, lead them to that state. Changchub semcho grimpoche, make panam kegyoche, kepa nyampa mepayang, gone gongdu pelba sho. And then the prayer for the quick return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang Drakpa, father and sons, together with your lineage, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realm. Yes.
And you are quickly into a bunch of confusing terminology for people who studied the Prasanjika, where the same words are used but with different meanings.
I'm not sure, William, are you talking to us or are you talking to yourself? We're hearing you. Okay. You're making your own dedication. Okay. Victorious Losang, father and sons, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please now bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged, which we hopefully were called upon during this last class. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare both of the victorious one's teachings and mothers, living sentient beings, you suddenly departed to peace. At this, it was a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the blessings, the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta, mind generation, of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And to all of our teachers, Dalai Lamas, Yangtze Rinpoches, Lama Zopa Rinpoches, You who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateway for fortunate beings traveling to liberation, engaging as you do with skillful means, moved by mercy, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. And thinking particularly of our other Dharma friends who are ill at the present time, Jeffrey Hopkins and others, thinking to dedicate, not only to pray, but to dedicate the merits that they recover and continue teaching us, and that those who have passed away will quickly find perfect human rebirths, encounter perfect Mahayana gurus, and quickly ascend through the stages of the grounds and paths and achieve enlightenment. Especially in the Far East and in the houses of Congress and in the Americas, wherever the angry minds of retribution, of evil and so forth are arising, may those minds be quickly quelled. May they be overcome due to these virtues. And from our own point of view, thinking, may these virtues support me to recognize when these undesired sufferings arise that are due to the negative actions of past lives. And they fall like rain. Grant us blessings to be able to transform them into the path by seeing them as instances for the exhaustion, the finishing off of past negative deeds. So we can take on with our meditation on Tonglen, taking and giving, taking on the sufferings of sentient beings, giving all of our virtues and happiness and so forth to others. We can use these experiences to enhance our practice rather than becoming irritations and obstacles to our practice. So thank you very much. See some of you this coming Monday. Look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Venerable George.
I know.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Venerable George.
George.